Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by grandtheftworld.com. That's the website right there. If you've never been to it, that's kind of what it looks like. Go check it out, grandtheftworld.com. It's April 24th, 2022. This is episode 77. Something about do your own research. As we're going to hear, these are the 4 words you're not supposed to be cool with those words anymore. Do your own research traditionally has been a sign of people who think for themselves, people who might be self-reliant and capable of supporting themselves, not dependent on other people, not infringing on their freedom. It was tended to be a good thing. All of a sudden now in the past couple of years, New York Times, Forbes, CNN, they're telling you, don't do your own research. Don't critically think. Why are you even thinking about it? You might even say.
4 words, 4 little words that are hurting America's pandemic response. What are they? Do your own research. Everybody has a supercomputer in their hand that empowers them to do their own research, which is great, right? Isn't it?
Can we all stop saying, I need to do my own research? Nobody who's saying that is getting in a lab and doing tests. At best, you're reading other people's research. And more likely, you're probably reading a tweet about a headline, about a blog post, about someone else's research.
4 words, 4 little words that are hurting America's pandemic response. What are they? Do your own research.
Can we all stop saying, I need to do my own research? Nobody who's saying that is getting in a lab and doing tests. At best, you're reading other people's research. And more likely, you're probably reading a tweet about a headline, about a blog post, about someone else's research.
That phrase, do your own research, is popping up a lot in conversations about coronavirus and about COVID vaccines. But this go-it-alone approach, doing your own research, it seems so innocent, but it can have serious consequences.
In other words, CNN says, don't do your own research.
What are the roots of this phrase? I feel like I used to hear it around QAnon craziness.
Well, today, the deer antler guy was sentenced to 41 months in prison for his role in the Capitol riot.
The same phrase, do your research, is being peddled by some people who do have ill intent, who want to push you down certain paths, who want to, either for profit reasons or for geopolitical reasons, want to make sure that you are reading certain information as opposed to listening to authoritative sources.
And you will respect my authority.
So what should be an actually smart idea, especially in the US with such a lack of funding and media literacy and all of these issues, it can really actually help make things worse.
Yeah, it's a sneaky little phrase.
Here's the 4 words that are helping to spread vaccine misinformation. Are you ready? According to CNN, here they are. Do your own research.
Do your own research.
Do your own research. It's a sneaky little phrase.
That's right, folks. CNN here to tell you, don't look into these things for yourself. Don't do your own research. Don't question anything. Just listen and obey.
He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
Once again, the media is clamoring to tell you to stop looking into stuff for yourself. Do your own research. Those 4 words are hurting the U.S. pandemic response, CNN chief media correspondent Brian Stelter said on Reliable Sources Sunday.
This is CNN.
It's our job.
I appreciate the struggle of the audience in this, right? Because it's hard. But when you do get practiced at this, for me, it's as easy as listening to ancient alien theorists say blank. Like, it means the same thing. The whole bunch of nonsense is going to follow. The whole thing is nonsense. It's meaning nonsense, literally. It is not you can't sense it. There is nothing to sense. There's no evidence. There's no basis. There's no objective reality to it. It does not exist. But they can give life to it. Getting people into those unrealities is how those people gain power over their captives, because it's a system of slavery.
Yeah, the paradox here is when Brian Stelter says that, the irony here is it actually turns people's critical thinking off. So it actually allows them to propagandize them more, whereas liars who have the ability, whether it's CNN or just the average person on the street, if they have free speech and allowed to go out and tout their lies, people over time will catch on to them and develop actually greater critical thinking abilities. So there's sort of a paradox there. That's the reason why free speech exists. So we can debate these ideas that people put out in the public space. But they can't really win those debates because most of it isn't backed up by any sort of credibility or evidence or anything they can they can use to back up what they're saying in regards to the CNN and the Stelter types, mainstream media in general.
But they were like, what if you could get the audience not reference reality anymore?
That's the number one goal. I've been saying this for a long time, especially in my logic course, that the greater good is predicated on the denial of reality. And it's for the subjective fantasy of someone else's reality, which is usually some form of up utopia that they're trying to sort of push on to people and instantiate in people's minds and manifest in the world in some capacity. And so it really is predicated on, you don't own you don't own your thoughts, you don't own your own perceptions, you don't own your own conceptions, and we do. And we're going to be the ones to relay that for you and what your reality fundamentally is. We'll create it for you. Don't worry.
We're going to get into that. Plus, we have a multitude of food processing plants in near memory that have had accidents. A couple of them, I think, involved airplanes crashing, disruptions going on. It's only of concern because we've been told there's going to be food shortages and all these other things, and it's Putin's fault, of course. But these extracurricular things could also be balanced out. Maybe food fires at these processing plants are a normal thing. They're baking cookies all the time. They don't clean the oven. We'll have to see. But it's kind of alarming in the juxtaposition of rising food prices and lower amounts of food being available if food distribution was being fudged with.
The term bread and circuses comes from an ancient Roman poet describing how the people are governed, not by excellence in public service, but by food and distractions, like a herd of livestock. Today's circuses can be found on Twitter, a reflection of the human herd's short attention span. Meaningless distractions to keep everyone calm while their food supply is being destroyed. While fools joke about Biden doing a horrible job, his administration is doing such an efficient job of destroying America that anyone running in 2024, if there is an election, will have to run on the Build Back Better platform. Starvation has been used as a weapon of mass destruction for years. In just a 2-year period, Stalin's communist government murdered over 3 million people in Ukraine by simply pulling the strings of bureaucracy, sanctions. The Ethiopian counterinsurgency burned crops and food stores, airily bombed food markets, and restricted trade. They then began a resettlement plan that killed at least 80,000 people, with further starvation. The U.S. State Department murdered over 500,000 women and children in Iraq, with starvation by sanctions. And this is exactly what is happening in America today. The Biden administration's sanctions against Russia are only succeeding at killing more innocent people all over the world by dramatically cutting down the worldwide food supply. There is already a significant wheat, fuel, and fertilizer shortage, which is obviously going to affect everything else, starting with fresh produce and livestock. But in order to completely collapse the food economy, they'll have to start destroying food packing plants as well, so that there is nothing left on the shelves for you to eat.
There have been confirmed over a dozen disabling accidents at food plants in the last month, over a dozen.
Absolutely, and we're talking about some really significant plants. The Taylor Farms facility in Salinas, California was completely destroyed by a fire last week. We've had 2 major potato processing plants in Belfast, Maine and Warden, Washington that were completely gutted, which is happening at a time where we already have a potato shortage globally. You were talking about the onion supply at that Rio Fresh, but it's not just produce plants. Last month there was a fire that took out a Nestle food plant out in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and that's impacting frozen food brands like Hot Pockets or Stouffer's, which maybe you might buy if you can't get fresh food from a warehouse that just exploded.
Those still satiated with their bread and circuses are soon going to start getting hungry. And it's because America is under siege, being destroyed from within by a corrupt government, while the people seek fairness on Twitter.
Also, in the past week, there was overturning of a federal mandate that wasn't very popular. The mask mandate was something that was continuing, lingering on in the airline industry. This past week, many people celebrated mid-air when the mandate was dropped, and things kind of in that realm might be getting back to normal. Though, as we saw last week, there's an undercurrent of laws being passed that kind of keep this COVID lockdown, restrictions, future say over your rights, all those things alive are going on behind the scenes.
Out of Florida, where a federal judge has just overturned the CDC's national mask mandate for planes and other forms of public transportation.
A U.S. district judge said the court accepts the CDC's argument that masks will limit COVID-19 transmission, but that alone was not sufficient to exceed the agency's authority.
That means the TSA will not enforce the rule at airports and other transportation hubs.
The CDC, for the record, still recommends wearing one if you're on a train or on a bus or at the airport or on a plane.
This is obviously a disappointing decision. The CDC continues recommending wearing a mask in public transit.
Basically a get out of jail free card for people who want to get off the masks.
I have actually a lot of passengers I'm hearing from this morning who are begging us even go on strike to stop this. People are really upset about it.
You should wear the best filtration mask you can, an N95 or KN95 mask. So in my case, I'll still do that.
I'm going to get on a plane in about an hour. Thankfully, I'm vaccinated and boosted and have a good quality mask, so she'll feel reasonably good.
I think when it comes to mask mandates, they're there because people just aren't great people. And that's just the bottom line. Americans just aren't great to each other. We just aren't. And so when it comes to things like flying, I don't want to get on a plane with super spreaders. I don't want to get on a plane with 214 other people that are going to be breathing on me with their COVID breath. I don't want it. Yeah. I don't want it. I want the mask.
April 18th, the Biden administration announced that the Transportation Security Administration will no longer enforce the federal mandate requiring masks in all U.S. airports and on-board aircraft. Your masks are now optional.
Oh, yeah!
Masks will be optional this evening for all crew and cab crews as well.
And the federal government just changed the mask mandate. You no longer have to wear a mask on United flight.
Now optional for employees, customers, all the way to White House. This official on Southwest Airlines for the full.
Yay! No more masks! Woo!
I'm not wearing mine. That's my personal choice. It is up to every single one of you on board not to do that.
One of the biggest stories this week, the mask mandate lift. Predictably, the authoritarians are losing their minds. Even though they can still mask up as much as they want, they just want to control you.
It puts the lotion on its skin.
And instead of making it about the ruling, dissenters launch a character assassination on the federal judge that helped free us from the masks. NPR wrote this laughably biased article. The judge who tossed mask mandate misunderstood public health law, legal experts say. Oh, there's the overused blanket experts say source. Are we to assume all legal experts have the same opinion then? Curious they only handpicked the experts critical of her ruling. And oh, look, here's another news outlet citing experts. This one says 4 COVID experts say it's time to accept reality. Vaccines work, masks do not. Back to the National Propaganda Radio article. It zeroes in on Judge Catherine Mizell's interpretation of the word sanitation. She shouldn't have used the actual definition. You know, the intent of the law under the 1944 Public Health Service Act. No, instead, she should have favored a definition the federal agencies can interpret for themselves. Except the ruling was to actually rein back in that kind of CDC overreach. And that's what NPR has issue with. This ruling could have a lasting effect on the CDC authority. Wait a minute, did we as voters elect anyone from the CDC, allow it to have this kind of authority over our freedoms? NPR, even if we're skeptical about agencies or even about Congress's ability to make good judgments in this time, we certainly do not want these decisions to be in the hands of a single unelected judge. Except that's part of the problem here. This mandate was put into effect without even a vote from Congress. And in fact, Congress had legislation in the works to end the mandate. Judge Mizell says the CDC even improperly bypassed a standard requirement to accept public comments in the rule. So we, the people, don't appreciate these decisions to be in the hands of a single unelected agency. Here's what 10 TV out of Columbus has to add. Poll: most people in U.S. want masks for travelers.
Everything that guy just says is bullshit. Thank you.
These news organizations are so used to gaslighting, they forget we have eyes.
Under no circumstance are you allowed to take off your blindfold.
How can this be true if less than 1 in 4 were wearing masks in airports after the announcement? Why are the majority of reactions laughing at this poll? Why haven't I seen any videos of people booing on planes rather than this? But this isn't about health or science. As Little Red Flying Hood reveals, it's about power.
The immediate steps were to determine what power we had to respond to that.
The immediate steps were to determine what power we had to respond to that.
And last but not least, we've got a special guest tonight, James Evan Pilato of Media Monarchy, someone I've known and considered a colleague for now over like 15, 16 years.
I love a routine, and if I can get into a routine, I can do the hell out of it. So that's even why it makes it easier to sort of, oh, I do an 8-hour stream Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Getting into that routine and knowing, hey, I do this on the weekend. It also, again, it felt really fucking important then. It felt like Bushes and the crazies and the skull and bone, they're going to kill us all. And 9/11 Truth was a very urgent thing.
Yeah, it was back then.
Now, I haven't checked lately, but I used to be able to go to your website and go all the way back to the beginning. You still have all your posts online from everything you've ever done?
I do. It's unfortunately a little broken. It's a little wonky.
Do you still have all the original recordings?
I have like 99% of it. There was a few things that got lost, but I think I knew I lost them then.
It's super useful for people to reference back to be like, what was going on at that time? It's like, it's important to history. So I want to make sure it gets preserved.
It's an interesting time capsule.
Proliferated.
Yeah.
Something I'm now able to do on my own stream. So when I should we rocket forward to more of the present day?
Well, I wanted to nail down before people like look at what you're doing today and say it's impossible for me to do. I wanted them to understand how you took it step by step and you overcame challenges along the way. You didn't always know how it was going to work out, but you headed in the right direction anyway. Your optimism, your attitude of gratitude has always remained consistent and intact. And then slowly, as you got more confidence and you're like, I could do this myself. And by 2012, you and Corbett had probably kicked off New World Next Week. You got 1,000 episodes under your belt now, and Media Monarchy's been running for 16 years, and you got it going on. So I didn't want people to look at you like this is the unattainable goal to be like James Evan Pilato someday. I wanted it to be like, no, we're just regular dudes who applied ourselves over time consistently.
I have a little of a funnier angle.
Good. Thank you.
You weren't going to be a media. You even just said, you're like, I can't believe I talk into the microphone so much. I wanted to talk into the microphone so much. Corbett was going to be a teacher. The world's funny and it's all turned out this way. I'm doing the thing I've wanted to do, but it's not the flavor that I exactly thought it would be. So then it gets funny at times to get the outreach of, hey, how do you do your thing? To just get an email and go, hey, how do you do that? Okay, well, go back to public school and talk a bunch. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, the same, what's the meme about?
Be a class clown.
How do you, explain your stances or your sources on these things. It's like, I don't know how to explain 20 years of work and research to somebody who's arguing with me about some current event.
Yeah. And quickly, public school, we have a shortage of comedians in the world because public school's job is to destroy comedians. And I was in 6th grade with this kid who was hilarious, could make everybody laugh. They sent him back to 5th grade, and then he stopped being funny. That's how it works.
Man, if I were in school now, they'd try and put me on all kinds of drugs. They would, I don't know what on earth they would, because I was defiant and sort of, against their
questioning and therefore intelligent.
Oppositional defiance disorder.
Yeah,
that's exactly.
You're ODD, man. You got the oppositional defiance disorder, bro.
Just keep adding them.
Go to the rubber room. Go sit in the rubber room. Learn your lesson. And to kick it off tonight, let's go to somebody demonstrating some intellectual self-defense. It's the clip at the beginning of Luke Radowski's latest video from wearechange.org and bestpoliticaltshirts.com, bestpoliticalshirts.com. And this video at the beginning, it's insightful because most people would want to capitulate to that pseudo authority. And thankfully, there's a gentleman there to inform the unwitting citizen that they're falling prey to a scam. And let's see how that rolls. Let's go to Luke with the kickoff.
He works for a company, 3GS. I'm going to save you £100 fine right now. Walk into the Arndale. He works for a private company. I promise you, he does not work for the council. He's a subcontractor. You don't. How much of the fine goes to Manchester City Council?
So I couldn't tell you exactly what percentage.
I'll tell you, it's £20. Of the, what, £100 fine it is? The rest goes to your company, 3GS. What you guys do is sick. Honestly, walk into the Arndale, he cannot follow you. That's a private building. I'll walk with you, I promise you. I'm going to save you money right now. He's using scare contacts he's using scare tactics to intimidate you. Don't listen to him, just follow me into the Arndale and he will not follow. Yeah. So just come into the Arndale, it's a private building.
Understand what I've done?
Yeah, apparently he dropped litter. They were contracted to originally get rid of toxic waste and all the major rubbish around the suburbs, but instead they target the easy money pick, which is cigarette. Yeah. There you go, he's not following you.
What are you
YouTube.
Talk about a modern-day Robin Hood and unaccountable evil. Multinational corporations are in charge of your life more than you think, and they will stop at nothing trying to take away every red cent you have if you allow them to.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false. This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come